Alright, so let me lay this out because honestly, I'm still pretty irritated by it. I've been cooking at this restaurant for years. It's a nice spot, and the kitchen's my domain. Now, don't get me wrong, cooking all day for strangers is one thing, but it's different when I bring food home for my wife and kids. We've got two little ones, my son who's 8 and my daughter who's 6, and honestly, I love making dinner for them. Every single night, I wrap up work, pack up some good stuff, and bring home a hot meal for the whole family. This has been our setup for years. I handle dinner during the week, and on weekends, my wife steps in and takes over. It works for us. She does breakfast and lunch on weekdays, so we both have our thing, you know? It's not like we ever made a big formal arrangement, but it's just the routine we settled into, and it works. Well, it was working just fine until recently. Anyway, last Friday, my wife had a few friends over for a little girls' night at our place. I'd already had a long shift, but I didn't want to break tradition, so I packed up dinner for the family as usual. And when I got home, I joined in for a bit before heading to bed early. That's when her friend Stacy, who's got a way of being blunt, started asking my wife questions about who does what around the house. And she wasn't subtle. She was like, "So, does he ever actually cook for you? Or is he one of those husbands who just cooks at work and thinks his job is done?" Now, I was half expecting my wife to step in and set the record straight, right? Because it's not like I'm some guy who just sits around when I'm home. I make dinner every night, even if I've had a busy shift. But instead of saying, "Oh no, he actually brings dinner home every night," or something like that, my wife kind of laughs it off and goes along with it. Like, she just made some joke about how I'd rather leave the cooking to her when I'm home and how I never cook. That got Stacy going, and she starts telling this story about her ex-husband who was, according to her, the laziest man alive. She goes on and on about how he never lifted a finger around the house and how she had to do everything herself. And the whole time, my wife is sitting there laughing along, nodding her head, and going, "Yeah, it's so hard to get him to cook at home." Just throwing me under the bus like I'm some lazy guy who never does anything. I didn't say anything then because, you know, they're having their girls' night and I didn't want to make it weird. But I'll be real with you, it really bugged me. Here I am spending every evening after work getting food together for everyone, making sure my wife and kids have a nice dinner. I even make different things sometimes because my wife likes one thing and the kids might want something else. So yeah, it hit a nerve when I'm hearing them joke around like I'm just slacking off, especially coming from my wife. Like, what was the point of that? I went to bed early that night trying to shake it off, but it just kept gnawing at me. It was like, the more I thought about it, the more annoyed I got. I mean, why wouldn't she just speak up? I get wanting to keep things light with friends, but I don't think you should do that by making your spouse look bad, especially when it's not even true. The way I see it, your partner's supposed to have your back, not join in when someone's making fun of you, even if it's all just a joke. Next morning, I figured maybe she'd bring it up or, I don't know, maybe realize she put me in a bad spot. But nope, nothing. She acted like everything was totally normal. So I waited until after breakfast, once the kids were out of earshot, and brought it up. I said something like, "Hey, last night when you guys were joking about me not cooking, that kind of stung. You know I cook dinner for us every night. Why would you just laugh along and make it sound like I don't?" And she just looked at me like I was making a big deal out of nothing. She goes, "Oh, come on, it was just a joke. I didn't think you'd take it so seriously." But it's not just a joke when it's your partner, you know? Like, here's someone you love, who knows all the things you actually do, yet they're sitting there acting like you don't. I tried explaining that it just felt disrespectful, and that it made me feel like all the effort I put in every day didn't matter. I thought she'd get it, but instead, she doubled down. She said she was just trying to keep things light, and that she didn't want to make it awkward by defending me in front of Stacy. She was acting like I'd asked her to pick a fight, when really, all she had to do was say, "Actually, he does cook. In fact, he brings dinner home for us every single night." But nope, apparently that would have been too awkward. She told me to just let it go and stop being so sensitive, which honestly just added fuel to the fire. I tried to stay calm, but it was pretty clear we weren't seeing eye to eye on this at all. At that point, I didn't really know what else to say. Felt like whatever I said was just going to bounce off. So I let it go, at least for the time being. I went about my day, took the kids out for a bit, tried to just cool off. But in the back of my mind, it still felt like this weight sitting there, reminding me that my own wife thought so little of what I do for our family that she'd rather laugh it off with her friend than stand up for me. So that was my Friday night and the entire weekend. And yeah, I know some people might say I'm overreacting, but it's not about the joke itself. It's about what it represents, right? I'm putting in effort every day, making sure there's good food on the table for everyone. And in return, I get treated like it's not even worth acknowledging. Maybe it's a small thing, but but it's hard to forget about it when it feels like all that work, all those evenings making sure my family has a nice meal, got thrown under the bus for the sake of a quick laugh, just leaves you wondering where you stand, you know? And maybe that's the part that gets to me the most. So, after that weekend of stewing over the whole thing, I finally decided I couldn't just let it go. I mean, yeah, it was supposed to be a joke or whatever, but it wasn't just any joke to me. It felt like my wife was cool with letting her friends think I was some lazy husband who doesn't pull his weight, when that couldn't be further from the truth. Monday rolled around, and after I got home from work and put the kids to bed, I brought it up again. This time I wanted her to understand why it actually got under my skin. I told her, "Look, I know it seemed like no big deal to you, but it made me feel like all the effort I put in just doesn't matter to you. It's like you'd rather laugh along with your friends than say something nice about me." She gave me this look like I was blowing it way out of proportion. Her whole vibe was like, "Are you serious right now?" And then she goes, "I already told you it was just a joke. Why are you still so hung up on it?" I was trying to stay calm, but it was getting harder to keep my cool. I told her, because it's not just about the joke, it's about the fact that you didn't even correct her. It's one thing to laugh about something, but another to just sit there and let your friend think I don't do anything. It's like you'd rather let them believe that than actually stand up for me. And that's when she got defensive. She started saying how she didn't want to make it awkward in front of her friend, that she was just trying to avoid any weird vibes. But to me, it felt like she was avoiding weird vibes at my expense. I couldn't help but say, "So it's better to make me look bad than to make your friend feel uncomfortable." She sighed like I was missing the point completely and goes, "I'm sorry if it came off that way, but it wasn't like that at all. I just didn't want to make it awkward by arguing with Stacy about something so trivial." At this point, I was beyond frustrated. She wasn't getting it at all. It was like she'd rather make me feel like a joke than risk her friend having an awkward moment. And yeah, maybe it was a small thing, but it didn't feel small when I was the one being thrown under the bus. So I told her, "I don't get how you think it's trivial, when I'm the one doing this every day. You think I'm happy to come home, tired from work, and still make dinner every night? I do it because I want to, but it would be nice to feel like it's at least noticed. I'm not asking for a medal here, just a little acknowledgement." She crossed her arms and just stood there, giving me that look people give you when they think you're making a mountain out of a molehill. And then she says, "Well, maybe I just thought you'd let it go because it was one comment. It was like a wall was between us." I was trying to explain how her not standing up for me made me feel like she didn't respect what I do, and she just kept brushing it off, acting like I was overreacting. So I said, "All right, if it's no big deal to you, then maybe I'll just stop bringing home dinner. Then you won't have to feel awkward or cover for me, since apparently I'm not doing much anyway." I thought maybe that would get through to her, but instead, she rolled her eyes and laughed, saying, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. You're really going to stop bringing dinner home just because of one little joke?" At that point, I was done. I didn't even want to keep arguing because it was clear she wasn't going to get it. I just looked at her and said, "Fine, I guess we'll see." Then I went to bed because I didn't see the point of dragging this out when she wasn't listening. The next day I went to work, and I decided I'd actually follow through. I still brought food home for the kids because I didn't want them to get caught up in this, but I didn't bring anything for her. I figured if it's really no big deal, then she won't care, right? When I got home that night, I could see her eyeing the takeout bags, clearly expecting her share like usual. And when she realized there was nothing for her, she looked at me like I'd grown a second head. She goes, "So you're really not bringing me anything now?" I just shrugged and said, "Well, you don't think I cook anyway, so I figured you wouldn't mind handling dinner yourself." Her face went red and she was clearly annoyed. She muttered something under her breath and headed to the kitchen to make herself a sandwich. I could tell she wanted to argue about it again, but I think she realized I wasn't in the mood to keep going in circles. Over the next couple of days, I stuck to my plan. I'd come home with food for the kids and nothing for her. Each night she'd give me that annoyed look but wouldn't say anything. It was a quiet but tense standoff with her clearly waiting for me to break. And honestly, a part of me was hoping she'd just get the point and realize that maybe I wasn't being so unreasonable after all. But every night, it was the same. She'd make her own food, shoot me that look, and we'd go to bed without really talking. At one point, I wondered if I was dragging it out too far. But then I'd remember how she'd laughed along with her friend, acting like everything I do didn't matter. That frustration kept me going. Finally, one night as I was tucking the kids in, my son asked, "Dad, how come you're only bringing food for me and sister? Doesn't Mom want any?" Kids, man. They pick up on stuff faster than you'd think. I didn't want to drag him into it, so I just said, "Mom's making her own food this week, buddy." He looked confused but didn't press it. It's funny because I felt kind of petty, But at the same time, I didn't feel wrong. I'd tried talking to her, tried to explain why it bugged me, and she just brushed it off. I felt like this was the only way to make her see I was serious. If she wasn't going to appreciate what I do every day, then maybe she should see what it's like without it. I'll admit, part of me wanted her to just apologize, say something like, "Hey, I didn't mean to make you feel like your work doesn't matter." But I didn't want to hold my breath for that. For now, all I could do was stick to my guns and see if she'd come around. And so, another day went by. Same routine, food for the kids, nothing for her, and that look from her every night, like she was daring me to give in. It felt like a weird sort of stalemate, neither of us willing to back down. But for the first time in a while, I didn't feel like the one getting stepped on. So a few days into this quiet standoff, I noticed my wife's patience was starting to crack. She didn't like me not bringing her food every night, even if she was trying to act like it wasn't bothering her. Every time I came home with just enough for the kids, she'd do that thing where she'd give me a quick look, like she was waiting for me to hand over a meal for her. But then, she'd turn and go make something for herself. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Instead of just coming out and talking about it, she started leaving hints. It was little things at first. One night, she sighed loudly while she was making herself a sandwich, like she wanted me to ask what was wrong. Another night, she mentioned how tiring it was to have to cook after a long day, which was kind of funny considering this was exactly the situation I'd been in all along. But, of course, I didn't say anything. I just went on with my night, pretending I didn't hear her dropping those hints. Then, on Friday night, things got more direct. I got home with dinner for the kids, and she was sitting in the living room, scrolling on her phone. I could tell she'd been waiting for me, probably hoping I'd break and bring her something. When she saw I hadn't, she just sighed and said, "Really? You're still doing this?" I just looked at her and shrugged, saying, "Well, you don't think I do anything, so I figured I'd give you a taste of what that's like." That's when she lost her cool a bit. She stood up, put her hands on her hips, and said, "This is getting ridiculous, don't you think? I get it, you're mad, but I already told you it wasn't meant to be taken seriously." I wasn't backing down, though. I told her, if it's not a big deal, then why does it bother you so much? You laughed along with your friend like I'm just some guy who can't be bothered to cook for his own family. So I don't know, I'm just giving you a break from my non-cooking. She huffed and looked away, like she was trying to keep her temper in check. Then she goes, "It's not about that. It's about you refusing to move on from something that wasn't even meant to hurt you. I thought you'd understand I was just trying to keep things light with Stacy." I took a breath, trying not to snap back. It was like we were just going in circles with this. You know, it's not hard to just say, "Hey, my husband actually cooks every night." Why is that such a big deal to you? I don't get it. You didn't even try to stand up for me. You just went along with it. She looked at me, and for the first time, I could see she didn't have a quick response. She opened her mouth, then closed it, like she was actually thinking about it. I figured this was the moment I'd been waiting for. Maybe she'd finally understand why it bugged me so much. But instead, she just shook her head and went, "Well, I still don't get why you're so bent out of shape over one joke." And with that, she walked off into the kitchen, probably to make herself something to eat. I was frustrated, obviously. Felt like I'd hit a wall with her. I went to check on the kids, tucked them in, and then went to bed, just trying to let it go for the night. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were just going to keep doing this until one of us broke. Next day, things were tense. We both did the usual routines with the kids, acting normal enough in front of them, but the second they weren't around, it was like we were both ignoring each other. I kept expecting her to try and talk about it, but she just kept doing her own thing. It was like we were both too stubborn to make the first move, and neither of us was going to back down. Then came Sunday morning. Normally, weekends are her cooking days, but this time she just sat in the kitchen, sipping her coffee and scrolling on her phone like she was waiting for something. Finally, she looked up at me and said, "So, you're just going to sit there and not help at all?" I knew where this was going, but I figured I'd play along a bit. "I thought you'd be happy to get a break from all my non-cooking." That really set her off. She put her coffee down and finally came out with it. "You're being really petty, you know that? You're dragging this out way too far just to make a point." "Maybe I wouldn't have to make a point if you'd just apologized instead of brushing it off," I said, keeping my tone as calm as I could manage. "I don't get why that's so hard. All I wanted was for you to say you're sorry for making me look like a deadbeat in front of your friends." She stared at me for a moment, and I could tell she was actually thinking about it this time. Finally, she let out a sigh and said, "Fine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I made you feel like you weren't doing enough. but it's really tiring having to cook for myself after a long day. I don't know. It's been hard too. Part of me wanted to just accept it, let things go back to normal, but another part of me was still irritated. You know, I do this every night after work. It's not exactly easy for me either. She nodded, looking a bit more defeated this time, and said, "Yeah, I know, I didn't think about it that way." We stood there in silence for a minute, both of us just kind of lost in our own thoughts. It was weird because I could tell she was starting to understand, but at the same time, she wasn't fully there yet. Then she goes, "Look, I get that you're upset, but are we really going to keep this up? I don't want the kids to feel like there's something wrong between us." She had a point there. I didn't want the kids picking up on our tension, and I definitely didn't want to keep dragging this out. But it was also hard for me to just let go after feeling like I'd been thrown under the bus. So I told her, "Look, I'll bring you dinner again, all right? But I need you to get why this bugged me so much. I'm not just being petty for no reason. I work hard, and I want that to mean something to you too." She nodded, finally looking like she got it. She didn't say much, just gave me a small, quiet, "I'm sorry." And for the first time in days, it actually felt real. I could tell we still had stuff to work out, but at least we were getting somewhere. The tension in the room lifted a bit, and while things weren't totally back to normal, it felt like we'd finally managed to break through that wall. And yeah, maybe it took a few days of awkward standoffs, but at least she seemed to understand now. For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt like maybe we were on the same page, or at least close to it. After our conversation, things felt lighter, but not entirely back to normal. We weren't at each other's throats or anything, but there was still this leftover tension, like a rubber band stretched too tight. I could tell my wife felt awkward too, and I wasn't sure if it was because she genuinely felt bad or if she was just waiting for me to move on already. Either way, the silent tension was a lot better than the arguments, so I decided to go with it. So that Monday, I went back to bringing home dinner for everyone. I was ready to get back to the usual routine, partly because I missed it and partly because I wanted things to feel normal again. And look, even though I was still kind of annoyed, I wanted to put it behind us. At some point, you just have to decide that moving forward is better than holding a grudge, right? When I got home with the usual bags of food, she seemed genuinely relieved. I watched her face light up a bit when she saw I'd brought something for her too. She didn't say anything, but there was this subtle change in her, like she finally realized how much that small act of me bringing dinner home actually meant. That night, as we ate, she went out of her way to ask me about my day, which was new. Usually she'd ask the basics, like how work was, but this time, she actually listened, asking follow-up questions and looking at me like she cared about the answers. Honestly, it felt nice. It's not like we don't talk, but I guess after all this, I appreciated that she was trying a little harder to show she cared. And then, as if she'd read my mind, she said, "I really do appreciate everything you do, you know?" It caught me off guard, and I looked up at her, trying to figure out if she was just saying it or if she actually meant it. "Yeah?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual, but I'm sure she could tell I was surprised. She nodded and said, "I know I messed up with Stacy. I should have stood up for you. I didn't realize how important it was to you, but I get it now." It was one of those rare moments where you can tell someone's being completely real with you. I nodded, not really knowing what to say, and just said, "Thanks." I didn't want to drag it out or make it awkward by saying too much, so we just went back to eating in a comfortable silence. The rest of the week felt almost peaceful. She didn't bring it up again, but I could tell she was trying to show her appreciation in little ways. One night, after I put the kids to bed, she'd cleaned up the kitchen without me having to ask. Another day, she texted me at work to ask what I felt like eating that night, which was pretty much her way of saying, "I'll take care of dinner." It's funny, but those little gestures meant a lot to me, and I appreciated that she was making the effort to make things right. But of course, things couldn't stay that smooth forever. On Thursday, her friend Stacy showed up unexpectedly. I'd just gotten home, was unpacking the food, and boom, there she was at the door, like she was the ghost of awkward conversations past. Stacy came in with her usual big energy, laughing and making small talk with my wife as if nothing had happened. I kept my cool, but I'll admit I was a little on edge just seeing her. I had no clue if my wife had told her the truth yet or if Stacy still thought I was this guy who never cooked. Then, out of nowhere, Stacy starts up again saying, "So, Has he finally picked up a spatula at home yet? She said it like it was the funniest thing in the world, giving my wife this expectant look, as if they were both in on some hilarious inside joke. I looked over at my wife, wondering if she'd let it slide again, but this time she actually stepped up. She cleared her throat, gave Stacy a little smile, and said, "Actually, he brings home dinner for us every night after work. He's been doing it for years." There was a bit of an awkward pause as Stacy looked back and forth between us, clearly caught off guard. "Oh, I didn't know that," she said, her tone a bit thrown off. She let out a weird little laugh and quickly moved on, talking about something else. I didn't need her to apologize or anything, but just hearing my wife correct her like that felt like closure. I could see my wife had finally got it, and she was showing me that, even if it was a bit uncomfortable for her. After Stacy left, my wife came over and leaned against the counter, kind of fidgeting with her phone. "I wanted to make sure she knew the truth this time," she said, almost like she was explaining herself. I smiled and said, "I noticed." It felt good to see her follow through, and I think she knew that. Later that night, while we were getting ready for bed, she brought it up again, this time a bit more open about how she was feeling. She told me, "I've been thinking about how I handled things with Stacy. I didn't realize it, but I guess I was kind of embarrassed to tell her how much you actually do. It's like I felt this weird pressure to fit in with her experience, even though it wasn't true for us." I didn't totally get why that was a thing, but I could see she was being honest, and that was all I really needed. I told her, "I appreciate you saying that. It's just that, to me, all the stuff I do, it's not just for show, I want to be a good husband and dad, and it sucks when people think I'm the opposite." She nodded, saying, "I get it now. I'm sorry it took me so long." I didn't push it further because, honestly, that was enough for me. We both had a bit to learn from this, and I could see she was making the effort to meet me halfway. By now, I was just ready to leave it behind us. In the end, the whole situation was a lot, but it brought us closer in this weird way. I felt like we understood each other a bit better, and that's something I wasn't expecting. If you'd told me a week ago that this little joke situation would lead to some deep conversations about marriage and respect, I'd have laughed. But here we were, coming out the other side of it a bit stronger, and that felt like a win to me. So as we went to bed that night, there wasn't any leftover tension, just a sense that we were both back on the same team, and that's all I really wanted in the first place. After everything settled down, it honestly felt like a weight had been lifted. Things got back to normal pretty quickly after my wife had her talk with Stacy and admitted that I'd been cooking all along. The kids didn't notice much of anything during our little standoff, which was good, but even they seemed to sense things were a bit lighter at home now. For the first time in a while, everything just felt easy. No underlying tension or awkward silences. I went back to my usual routine of bringing dinner home each night. And I know it sounds weird, but it actually felt better than before, like I was finally being appreciated for it. My wife didn't have to say anything anymore. She just showed it in the little things. She'd set the table, or clean up afterward without me even asking, which was new. It's like she'd finally noticed what I'd been doing all along, and that little bit of recognition made a world of difference to me. The week after our big talk, we had one of those rare nights where we actually had time to just sit and talk without interruptions. The kids were busy with their school projects, so we found ourselves sitting at the table, just the two of us, sharing a meal I'd brought home. At first, it was just the usual small talk about our days, but then she surprised me with something. She put down her fork and looked at me, saying, "I've been thinking about what you said, about how you want to be a good husband and dad. I don't think I ever realized how much it mattered to you." That caught me a bit off guard. I didn't think she'd been putting that much thought into it, but I guess our little drama had made her reflect on things too. I told her, "It's not even about just being good. I don't want to be like my dad was, never there, never caring. I know I work a lot, but I don't ever want you or the kids to feel like I'm not trying." She nodded and said, "I know that now. I guess I took it for granted, thinking you'd always do those things just because. But I get it. You're putting effort in because you want to, and I want to appreciate that." Hearing that was honestly a bit of a relief. For the first time, it felt like she actually understood where I was coming from, and that was enough for me. We talked a bit more about things, nothing too deep or serious, but just enough that I felt like we were finally on the same page. That Friday, she did something that really hit home for me. I got back from work a bit earlier than usual, and as soon as I walked in, I smelled something cooking. Now, this doesn't happen often because I'm usually the one doing dinner, but there she was, making a meal for all of us. She'd set the table, had a drink ready for me, and even told the kids that it was a special thank you dinner for Dad. I just stood there for a second, taking it all in. The kids were bouncing around, excited that Mom was doing something different, and she had this big smile on her face. She pulled me over and said, "I just wanted to give you a break. You deserve one after all those dinners." It was such a small thing, but it meant a lot. It wasn't fancy or anything, but she'd gone out of her way to make my favorite dish and put effort into making the night special. And for once, I was on the other side of things, just sitting down and enjoying a meal without having to worry about anything else. The kids were loving it too. They kept joking around saying, "Mom, are you going to cook more often?" And Dad's the real chef, though. It was nice to see them appreciating what I do in their own little way, even if they didn't totally understand everything that had gone on between us. After dinner, my wife actually insisted I just sit back while she cleaned up, which is not the usual. She told me to relax, saying I'd earned it. It felt strange, like I wasn't used to being taken care of like that, but it was a good kind of strange. She seemed genuinely happy to do it, and it was clear she wanted to make things right. Later that night, when we were winding down, she turned to me and said, "I know I've said it already, but I really am sorry. I shouldn't have let that joke with Stacy go like that. You do a lot for us, and I never want you to feel like it goes unnoticed." I didn't have much to say in return. I just thanked her and said that the whole situation made me realize how important it was to feel seen in our own home. We're not perfect, but I feel like this whole thing brought us a little closer, helped us both understand what we want from each other. Since then, it's been easier. We fell back into our usual routines, but it feels like we're both a bit more thoughtful. She's not just assuming I'll handle everything, and I'm not holding on to any resentment about her jokes with Stacy. We're communicating better, and honestly, I feel like we both grew from it. I've always thought relationships take work, but sometimes it's the smallest issues that bring out the biggest lessons. So, yeah, it was just a little misunderstanding that spiraled for a bit, but we're stronger now for it. And the next time someone like Stacy makes a comment, I have no doubt my wife's going to step up and set the record straight. We're both learning, both trying, and at the end of the day, that's all I can really ask for. It's funny how something that seemed so small turned out to be exactly what we needed to get a little closer, and I guess that's the real win in all of this.